Hey guys! Tonight we're stepping softly into the smoky, sunlit kitchens of ancient Egypt, where the air smells of baking barley, sizzling goose fat, and most importantly, onions. Lots and lots of onions. You're waking up on a woven reed mat in the corner of a bustling Theban palace kitchen. Clay ovens glow with orange light, wide ceramic pots bubble over low flames, and barefoot cooks glide around you in linen tunics that flap as they move from chopping block to fire pit. Someone hums a hymn to Hathor while slicing turnips. Someone else is grinding coriander seeds with a stone mortar the size of your head. You sit up slowly. Your nose twitches. It's already happening. The unmistakable, sharp, sweet smell of onions being fried in goose fat, sending its sacred sting straight to your tear ducts. You blink a few times. Welcome to breakfast shift. One thing becomes obvious immediately. This kitchen is onion territory. Onions hang from rafters in braided ropes, stuffed into jars of vinegar and dried along the windowsill. There's a whole basket just for the little purplish ones that they call tears of bastet. You overhear someone say that today's dish is lentil stew with triple onions, raw, roasted, and boiled. You mentally brace your digestion. But here's the kicker. It's not just food. In ancient Egypt, onions are power. Onions are purity. Onions are even sacred. You look around at the cooks, noting how they handle the vegetables, almost reverently, slicing them with flat bronze knives and whispering prayers as they drop rings into the pot. The kitchen master, a grey-bearded man named Kenamun, places a single white onion on a pedestal in the corner. You think it's for seasoning. It is not. That one is for Osiris. Kenamun claps twice, loudly. "Start the oil," he says, and a young boy rushes to ladle goose fat into a sizzling pan. The sound is oddly calming, like rainfall over hot stone. You wander outside for a moment, barefoot across packed dirt, and blink into the rising sunlight over Thebes. Behind you, smoke curls from the kitchen's chimney, like a signal to the gods. Breakfast is almost ready. You pass a pile of clean pottery stacked like bricks, and two girls sorting lentils into cracked bowls. One of them offers you a fig. You nod thanks and take a bite. It's sticky sweet and full of tiny seeds that crunch between your teeth. Back inside, Kenamun hands you your first job. It's the lowest ranking one, naturally, peeling onions. There's a mound of them, fat, flat-bottomed white ones with papery skins that cling like secrets. Your fingers quickly become sticky, then slippery. You wipe your hands on your tunic, which is already stained from yesterday's honey spill. This variety's from near Asyut. A woman beside you says, casually, elbow deep in a tub of barley. Better texture. They don't collapse in the pan like the Delta kind. You nod solemnly. You do not know what she means, but you are deeply impressed. You keep peeling. You wonder if it's possible to achieve enlightenment through onion peeling. Monks in other parts of the world climb mountains. Here, apparently, they just get assigned to the royal kitchen. Soon the air grows heavier, with the rich, mellow sweetness of onions beginning to brown. The cooks stop talking. One by one, they lean over the pot and inhale. A moment of sacred silence. Even Kenamun closes his eyes, and then you sneeze. Loudly. All heads turn toward you. You freeze. A half-peeled onion in one hand. For a terrifying moment, you think you've offended the gods. But instead, Kenamun grins. A proper sneeze, he says. She approves. You don't ask who she is, but you bow anyway. Breakfast is nearly done. The stew thickens, the onions melt, and the barley softens into a warm beige comfort that smells like home. If your home was shared with 20 very serious cooks, 12 cats, and a priest who once tried to bless a goose mid-roast. You glance at the kitchen's altar. Again, the onion is still there, untouched. Later, you'll find out it's been replaced daily for years. Never eaten, only admired. No one dares cook with it. One apprentice once did, and spent a week polishing bronze platters as punishment. A rooster crows somewhere outside. You ladle out bowls for the temple workers arriving soon. Every serving gets a single crisp slice of raw onion, laid lovingly on top, like a crown or a final warning. You take a moment to taste your own spoonful. It's surprisingly good, nutty, rich, sharp in all the right ways. You don't know it yet, but you'll crave this exact flavor for years. As you wash your hands in a stone basin outside the kitchen, you hear the chant of the morning prayer echoing down the palace corridor. The first line praises the sun. The second line, it praises onions. Historians still argue whether this was literal worship or just very intense food appreciation. But as you press a linen towel to your onion-scented hands, you suspect it might be both. You're barely finished scraping the onion skins off your hands when the next wave of tasks arrives. Because in ancient Egypt, food isn't just for meals. It's for ceremony, it's for trade, it's for healing, and most of all, it's everywhere, all the time, especially onions. Your next assignment is to help with the midday preparations. And this is where you learn the true meaning of onion ubiquity. The stew you helped with earlier, it was breakfast. Now you're moving on to something called onion cakes, which sound delightful until you find out they're more like heavy patties of spiced barley dough, pan-fried in goose grease, then smeared with a savory onion paste that looks suspiciously like fermented porridge. You grimace. The cook beside you raises an eyebrow. "Eat two, and you'll dream of crocodiles," he says, completely serious. You decide to eat only one. Everything. Today is onion-themed. You crush shallots with a smooth river stone. You slice white onions into thick discs, then grill them beside fish until both sides are beautifully charred. You help pickle small red onions in sour date vinegar and honey, tart, sticky little time capsules in clay jars. You even assemble something disturbingly chewy called onion jerky. No one explains what it is. You do not ask. The palace menu is strict. Onions appear in every dish, not because they're cheap. They're not, but because they're essential. They're considered purifying, protective, and practical. Soldiers take them into battle. Priests fast on them before rituals. Farmers bury them near irrigation ditches to keep snakes away. It's all very organized, very fragrant, and just a little obsessive. You sit on a low stool beside the fire, rubbing onion oil onto skewers of lamb to be roasted later for the nobles. The cook in charge, a woman named Kia, tells you that onions are sometimes called the thousand-eye vegetable. You ask why. She replies, "Because they watch everything, even after you eat them." You don't sleep well that night. Still, it's not all superstition. There's a reason these little bulbs are everywhere. They're hardy in the desert. They store well without spoiling. And in an age when half the known world has stomach troubles, onions are one of the only things that consistently, reliably don't make you sick, unless you eat 3 onion cakes in a row, which someone did yesterday. They're not here today. As you work, you learn to identify onion types by feel. The heavy, sweet white ones from northern farms, the spicier yellow onions from Nubia, the delicate red kind from temple gardens, grown in shade and watered with holy spring water. The priests claim those are the most sacred. You quietly think they're the tastiest. At midday, as the kitchen pauses for prayers, You wander out to the small herb courtyard nearby. There's a modest patch of onions planted in raised clay beds, protected from birds by netting made of old linen strips. A cat watches you suspiciously from between the stalks. You pretend you're not eyeing the largest bulb. It's probably been blessed. Later, lunch is served. Everyone eats with fingers, crouched on mats, or perched on stone ledges. And there's a bowl of onion leek soup so rich you could swim in it. Someone starts a lazy game of Name the Onion God, which turns out to be a real thing. Some say it's Set, god of storms, because of the stinging tears. Others insist it's Thoth, god of knowledge, because onions have layers. You suggest maybe onions are just onions. You're booed, gently but still booed. Then comes the afternoon assignment. Stuffing fowl. You're handed a plucked duck and instructed to fill it with minced onion, herbs, and chopped dates. Pack it full, says the cook. If it doesn't leak, it's not blessed. You wonder if this is an official proverb or just kitchen lore. While you work, you hear more stories. A young apprentice swears his uncle once rubbed onion paste on his forehead and instantly remembered a forgotten debt. Another boasts that onions can scare off hippos, which is a bold claim, considering hippos don't usually hang out in gardens. But nobody questions it. A scholar in the corner, chewing on raw shallots like candy, tells you that onion imagery has been found carved into tomb walls, not just as offerings, but woven into necklaces and laid across the chests of mummies. It's not a snack, he says. It's eternity insurance. Historians today still argue about how literal that was. Some think it was symbolic, a nod to the onion's endless layers, mirroring the layers of the soul. Others argue it was practical. Onions mask the smell of, well, let's call it afterlife ambience. You try not to think about that as you reach for more stuffing. The day winds on. The kitchen never fully quiets. Pots bubble, wood crackles, and someone always seems to be grinding something in a mortar. You're starting to enjoy the rhythm. The smell of onions that once felt overpowering now feels cozy, homey, like falling asleep under warm blankets made of tear-inducing vapor. By sunset, your hands are stained golden from turmeric and onion skin. You've prepped 5 kinds of stew, tasted 6 variations of onion cake, and learned 3 different words for simmer in Middle Egyptian. You didn't even know there were that many, as you scrape the last of the stew from the bottom of a pot. Kenneman pats your shoulder. You're learning, he says. Soon you'll be ready to pickle the sacred ones. You're not sure what that means, but you nod anyway. The sky outside turns pink, and the temple bells begin to ring. The next morning, you wake to the sound of wooden ladles clinking against ceramic bowls, the echo bouncing off the clay walls of the kitchen quarters. You rub your eyes. Your fingers still smell faintly of onions. Somehow, they always will. Today, you're not on soup duty. Instead, you're invited, drafted, into the sacred section of the palace kitchens. It's quieter here and far cooler. The air smells not just of herbs and spices, but of incense, oil, and something else you can't quite name, like dried papyrus and secrets. Your guide this morning is an older priest cook named Menhotep. He's one of those figures who glides instead of walks and speaks only in aphorisms. He greets you with, "An onion cut with gratitude does not sting." You're not entirely sure what to do with that information, but you nod politely and follow him deeper into the chamber. You pass a long, narrow table where onions are being meticulously sliced. Not chopped, mind you, but carved. Tiny crescents, paper-thin discs, decorative spirals. Each slice is placed in neat rows, on glazed tiles, and no one speaks above a whisper. "These are temple onions," Menhotep murmurs. "Not for eating, for offering." You blink. "You mean to the gods?" He smiles. "Who else?" Apparently, onions were considered so sacred in certain circles that they were offered at shrines, much like gold, perfumes, or incense. At the temple of Isis, they were laid out alongside lotus flowers. In the sanctuaries of Osiris, they were strung into necklaces and worn by high priests during seasonal rituals. Even pharaohs were buried with them, as sustenance for the afterlife, yes, but also as spiritual armor. Historians still argue whether this symbolism was universally held or specific to certain priesthoods. But regardless of the origin, the reverence stuck. You're handed a bowl of spring onions, smaller, more delicate than the hearty stewing onions, and told to rinse them in holy water, drawn just before dawn from the Nile. It must be before sunrise, Menhotep says, so the water hasn't yet learned the day's sins. You do your best not to spill any. There's something soothing about this place. The way light filters in through carved slats in the walls, the soft rustle of linen robes as the assistants move past, the fact that everything here has a purpose. Even the stray onion peel is collected and used in poultices or composted for temple gardens. A young novice begins reciting a hymn. It sounds suspiciously like a lullaby, but with a lot of references to digestion and purification. You listen closely. There's a line about onions cleansing the 7 internal rivers, which you suspect might be metaphorical, or perhaps an early attempt at understanding the circulatory system. Ancient Egyptian medicine often walked the line between poetic insight and wild speculation. A debate flares up between 2 priests over whether onions should be cut crosswise or lengthwise for the autumn festival. One insists that the crosswise cut reveals more layers, symbolizing the cosmos. The other argues that lengthwise evokes the spine of Osiris and is thus more appropriate for renewal. They go back and forth for 20 minutes. You are told to stay out of it. You happily comply. Later in the morning, you're shown how to prepare an onion garland. This isn't something you wear on your head, not unless you want to be teased by every child within 5 miles. These garlands are ceremonial, meant to be draped over altars or carried in processions. You thread small blanched onions onto fine strips of palm fiber, alternating with garlic cloves and dried lotus petals. The result is oddly beautiful, rustic, fragrant, and a bit like something you'd hang in a medieval pantry. As you work, Menhotep shares a story. He tells of a scribe who once wrote an ode entirely to the onion, not to Osiris, not to the pharaoh, the onion. He was punished with 2 years of root pulling, the priest says, completely deadpan. You're not sure if he's joking. You don't ask. At noon, the temple kitchens send a dish to the inner sanctum. A finely diced onion salad with dates, mint, and vinegar, served in alabaster bowls. You're not allowed to see the offering, but you're told the high priest himself sprinkles crushed rose petals on top. Because even the gods appreciate garnish, Menhotep says. You can't help but think of modern times, of restaurant plating contests, and TikTok chefs wielding microgreens. Maybe we're not so different, you think, except they're worshipping their onions, and we're mostly crying about ours. The heat grows thick again in the afternoon. The kitchen smells sweet and sharp, like 1,000 chopped scallions married a lemon. You help inventory the onion stores. Hundreds of baskets stacked neatly along the shaded corridor. Each is labeled in ancient glyphs, some with poetic names, like Moon's Eye or River Pearl. You wonder who decides what a batch of onions gets named. Somewhere, there must be an official title for that. The sacred onions are tracked carefully. A miscount could result in a full audit by the temple steward. That happened once, someone whispers. 2 onions went missing. Whole kitchen was locked down. They found them in a goose. Mystery solved. Goose roasted. You and your shift back at the temple herb garden, where you help water a narrow row of onions that have been planted in spiral patterns. A symbol of eternity, you're told. The soil is warm. The sun dips low. A nearby scribe hums a tune you've heard before. The Ode to the Onion, perhaps. Maybe the original wasn't such a terrible idea. By dusk, your hands are streaked with holy soil, and your mind is swirling. With ritual and scent, you've not just cooked with onions today, you've honored them. You've washed them in sacred waters, threaded them like jewels, even whispered their names like they might whisper back. And somehow, the idea that a humble vegetable could connect the living with the divine no longer feels so far-fetched. The evening air carries a soft breeze off the Nile as you make your way back through the winding corridor of the palace complex. The sandstone walls seem to retain the day's heat, exhaling it in long, sleepy breaths. Your linen tunic clings to your back, faintly damp from the temple gardens, and your afternoon spent under the sun. But there's a quiet peace to this moment, a rhythm to life, when it's dictated by sun, soil, and soup. Tonight, you've been assigned to kitchen scroll, duty, which sounds much more glamorous than it is. Your task, to help transcribe and review an inventory of the pharaoh's preferred recipes, focusing particularly on one ingredient you can already guess: onions. You settle into a low stool beside an older scribe named Bakari, who has a habit of muttering to himself and dipping his reed pen into wine instead of ink when distracted. The man knows more about culinary hieroglyphs than most know about politics, and he's got the attitude to match. Did you know, he begins, without preamble, that onion placement on the plate mattered more than meat quantity. In year 4 of Ramses III's reign, he raises a thin eyebrow at you, daring you to disbelieve. You nod solemnly. Of course it did. You lean over a scroll that's yellowed around the edges and smells faintly of cinnamon and fish paste. It's one of the older kitchen records, possibly salvaged from an earlier dynasty. The title roughly translates to offerings fit for a spirit's banquet, a poetic name for what is, at its core, a series of grocery lists and stew instructions. But buried between the more expected entries, fowl, lentils, barley, you find intricate descriptions of onion-based delicacies. One recipe is called onion bread for the morning ritual, made with crushed spring onions, wild yeast, and a drizzle of honey. Another is river onion broth, used in the festival of Ra, simmered with dried fish and caraway seeds. Each entry includes suggested moon phases for preparation. You're not sure whether that affects the flavor or just the priesthood's mood, but either way, it's written like gospel. Historians still argue whether these ceremonial recipes were ever truly consumed. Bakari says, squinting at a note scrawled in the margin, or if they were just symbolic, like edible prayers. You find that thought strangely soothing, that a meal might nourish the soul more than the stomach, as you help Bakari straighten the scrolls and apply fresh beeswax to preserve the more brittle corners. He gestures toward another bundle of parchment tied with reed twine. These, he says with a dramatic flair, are my favorites. He unties the stack to reveal what look like joke recipes, satirical imitations of temple meals, likely written by bored scribes with a bit too much meat in their system. There's us. Pharaoh's imaginary feast, which includes golden onions picked by cats and soup of eternal patience, which takes 9 years to boil and must never be stirred. You both chuckle under your breath. Even 3,000 years ago, people knew how to poke fun at bureaucracy. Later that night, you're called to help prepare for the next morning's cold offerings. Not the temple ones. These are for the household staff and visiting dignitaries. The kitchens are dimly lit by oil lamps, casting long flickering shadows that dance across the rows of mortar and pestle sets. The air is thick with the scent of coriander, pounded garlic, and of course, slow roasted onions. You're assigned to the pickling station. It's simple work, but methodical, sorting baby onions into ceramic jars, then covering them with a solution of date vinegar, tamarind paste, and a pinch of imported sea salt. You're told the pickled onions are a delicacy reserved only for those of high rank, or for those who bribe the kitchen guards very, very well. While you work, an old cook named Hetapi shuffles over and begins telling you about the time she smuggled a jar of the stuff to her sister, who worked on the docks. She cried, Hetapi says, dabbing her eyes, but from joy, not vinegar. You like Hetapi immediately. She tells you something else too. During times of plague, onions were thought to protect people from evil spirits and sickness. Worn around the neck, rubbed on doors, even placed under pillows to draw out bad dreams. Did it work? You ask. Hetapi shrugs. People still died, but they smelled better. It's the kind of joke that makes you laugh and feel sad at the same time. As the night deepens and the kitchen quiets, someone lights a cone of myrrh, incense. The smoke curls lazily into the rafters, mingling with the fading aroma of roasted vegetables and baked dates. You're finally dismissed for sleep, and as you stretch your aching back and shuffle toward the servant quarters, you realize something. You've spent the entire day immersed in onion lore, and somehow it never got boring. That humble, tear-inducing bulb turns out to be a thread that winds through ceremony, survival, medicine, and myth. It's more than just food. It's a cultural relic, a healing agent, a spiritual symbol, and, when aged just right, a pickled treasure. As you settle into your straw mat and listen to the wind tickling the palm fronds outside, your mind drifts to the image of golden onions laid in Pharaoh's tomb, not as garnish, as legacy, and you lowly kitchen hand are part of that story now. The morning light slips softly through the small windows of your quarters, painting the rough walls in muted golds and shadows. You stretch, the familiar aches in your shoulders, reminding you that yesterday's onion-heavy labor was real work, not the idle storytelling you sometimes imagine. But today promises something different, a rare invitation to witness the marketplace, where onions and all manner of produce are traded, bartered, and haggled over. You make your way down to the bustling, open-air market, a labyrinth of stalls packed with merchants hawking figs, honeycombs, woven baskets, and of course, onions. The smell is intoxicating, earthy, pungent, sweet. You navigate through the throng, brushing past veiled women carrying bundles of herbs, men shouting prices, and children darting between ankles like playful Nile fish. Here, onions aren't just food or ritual objects. They're currency, status symbols, and even a source of gossip. One vendor, a wiry man with a crooked smile, boasts loudly about his desert pearls. Onions so rare and sweet, they're said to cure insomnia. You're skeptical, but amused. Historians still argue whether these desert pearls were ever real or just a clever sales pitch. The man says, as he notices your raised eyebrow, You watch as a woman carefully inspects a basket of these onions, sniffing and squeezing each bulb before nodding in approval. The exchange of goods here isn't just about money, it's about trust, reputation, and community. Each onion tells a story, and every buyer knows it. Nearby, a group of children giggles as they weave through the stalls, daring one another to bite into raw onions. Their eyes water, but their laughter is unstoppable. You remember your own tearful first bite and wonder if onion-induced tears have always been a universal rite of passage. An elderly merchant beckons you over to his stall, where dried onion skins are displayed alongside exotic spices. These, he says in a hushed tone, are used to dye royal robes a deep golden hue. You hadn't realized onions contributed to fashion history. It seems even the colors you associate with royalty had humble, tear-streaked beginnings. You wonder, you overhear whispers of a strange custom from Nubia, where onions were woven into wedding crowns to symbolize fertility and protection. It's a reminder that onion lore stretches far beyond Egypt's borders, threading together diverse cultures in a fragrant layered tapestry. The day passes gently, filled with the sounds of bargaining, laughter, and the occasional bark of a camel. You gather a small bundle of onions, some for cooking, others for offering, feeling the weight of their history in your hands. As dusk approaches, you sit by the riverbank, peeling an onion slowly. The crisp layers separate with a soft papery rustle, revealing the glossy white beneath. You think about the marketplace, the temple, the kitchens, all places where onions live multiple lives. And as your eyes water yet again, you smile, knowing that in this ancient world, even something as simple as an onion carries stories worth savoring. The sun warms your skin as you follow the narrow dirt paths, leading toward the fields just beyond the city walls. Here, the life of an onion truly begins. Beneath the soil, where roots reach deep into the earth and bulbs swell with promise, you breathe in the scent of tilled land, a mixture of damp clay, crushed herbs, and something faintly sweet that you can only assume is onion. Farmers work steadily under the watchful eye of overseers, their hands skilled from years of coaxing life from the stubborn Nile mud. You watch as a woman carefully separates tiny onion seedlings, placing them in neat rows, with the precision of a jeweler arranging gems. There's a rhythm here, a slow, deliberate dance between human and earth. The onions you've come to know in the kitchen and market begin here, in these fields, tended with patience and care. Your guide today is an older man named Massey, who hums a soft tune while he checks the soil's moisture and points out the best patches for planting. The Nile floods are both friend and foe, he says. Too much water and the bulbs rot. Too little and they shrivel. We must learn balance. You ask about ancient farming tools, and Macy laughs. Imagine this, he says, showing you a simple wooden plow attached to a pair of oxen. No GPS, no tractors, just muscle, wood, and a prayer for a good season. You imagine the slow clump of hooves, the smell of sweat and fresh earth, and the occasional burst of laughter from the farmers' wives. Interestingly, onions were often planted alongside grains or lentils, a practice believed to improve soil, fertility, and ward off pests, a natural kind of teamwork, long before organic farming became trendy. You marvel at how modern ideas can sometimes circle back to ancient wisdom. Macy shares a curious detail. In some regions, farmers would weave protective amulets made from onion leaves into their clothing. The belief was that the onion's sharp scent could repel snakes and evil spirits lurking in the fields. Whether it truly works, he says with a twinkle in his eye, is something scholars still debate. As the afternoon light softens, you spot a group of children chasing one another with onion stalks held like swords. Their laughter echoes across the field, blending with the distant calls of birds and the gentle lapping of the Nile. You're reminded of how everyday life, work, play, survival is all connected through this simple plant. Before you leave, Macy offers you a freshly dug onion, still coated in rich soil. You peel away the layers right there, tasting the raw, sharp bite that's somehow both familiar and ancient. Walking back toward the city, the fields behind you bathed in golden light, you carry more than just the onion. You carry a sense of rootedness, of connection to the slow, patient rhythms of a world that still holds its secrets beneath the surface. And as you wander back through the winding streets, the onion's humble journey, from seed to staple, feels like a quiet reminder of life's enduring cycles. The evening settles softly over the city, and the flicker of oil lamps casts a warm glow against the limestone walls. You find yourself back in the kitchen's heart, the place where raw ingredients are transformed by fire and patience into meals, fit for gods and mortals alike. Tonight, you are invited to watch the preparation of a special dish, the Pharaoh's onion stew. This isn't just any stew. It's a carefully guarded recipe, whispered about in hushed tones by the kitchen staff. The onions chosen must be of a particular size, large, round, and fragrant, picked at the peak of ripeness. They will be peeled, sliced thinly, and simmered slowly with a delicate blend of spices that hint at faraway lands. You watch as the chief cook, a stout woman named Nefret, begins the ritual. She crushes coriander seeds with a mortar and pestle, releasing a heady aroma that mingles with the sharp scent of freshly cut onions. A pot of water bubbles gently on the fire, ready to receive the ingredients that will soon meld into a rich, comforting broth. Nefret tells you about the role onions played in ancient Egyptian medicine. They weren't just food, but remedies for everything from indigestion to heart ailments. Some texts recommend onion juice as a remedy for hair loss. Though you wonder how appealing that must have smelled, historians still argue whether these medicinal uses were mostly symbolic or truly effective. Nefret says, wiping her hands on her apron, but we do know the onion's sulfur compounds have antimicrobial properties, which might explain some of the old beliefs. As the stew simmers, you're allowed to stir gently, releasing more of that sweet, pungent onion fragrance into the air. The kitchen fills with warmth and the faint sound of bubbling liquid, an oddly soothing background noise that seems to slow time itself. Nefret smiles as she ladles a small portion into a clay bowl and offers it to you. The taste is both familiar and surprising, earthy and sweet, with just enough bite to keep you awake, but calm your mind. You imagine Pharaoh himself, savoring this stew in his golden halls, the flavors mingling with incense smoke and distant music. In the quiet moments after the meal, Nefret shares a quirky story. Once, a cook accidentally left onions out overnight near the temple archives, and the scent was said to have kept away a band of would-be thieves. Whether true or legend, it's a charming reminder of onions' place, not just on the table, but in everyday life. As you clean up and the kitchen grows quiet, you notice how the simple onion connects so many threads: health, flavor, protection, and tradition. It's a humble hero, often overlooked, but essential. You think back to the bustling market, the rich fields, and now this quiet kitchen moment. Each place adds a layer to your growing understanding of this ancient world. where even the most ordinary things carry extraordinary stories. Night deepens, and the city settles into a gentle hush. But inside the temple precinct, preparations are underway for a ceremony that blends the sacred with the aromatic, an onion offering to the gods. You find yourself among the temple attendants, the cool stone floors beneath your feet, and the flicker of torches casting long shadows on the walls. The air is thick with the scent of frankincense and myrrh, but there's a subtle undertone, sharp and earthy, that you recognize instantly. Onions! These humble bulbs have a revered place here, part of rituals that honor the gods and secure blessings for the people. A high priest explains the symbolism. The layers of the onion represent the many layers of existence: life, death, and rebirth. Peeling an onion is a metaphor for peeling back the mysteries of the universe, revealing hidden truths, one layer at a time. You watch as offerings are carefully arranged on an altar. Loaves of bread, jars of wine, and of course, baskets overflowing with onions. Each bulb is pristine, its papery skin shimmering faintly in the torchlight. The priest chants softly, invoking protection and prosperity. Interestingly, some scholars still debate whether these onion rituals were purely symbolic, or if the onions' physical properties, perhaps their pungent smell, were believed to ward off evil spirits. The truth may lie somewhere in between, in a blend of faith and sensory experience. As the ceremony unfolds, you feel a strange calm wash over you. The combination of scent, sound, and soft chanting, creating a cocoon of tranquility. The onion's scent, usually sharp and tear-inducing, here feels comforting, almost like a protective embrace. One attendant shares a quirky tidbit. Onion juice was sometimes used to anoint statues of deities, a practice thought to imbue the divine with the onion's vitality. You imagine the gods, momentarily scented with onion, a detail that makes their distant grandeur feel surprisingly approachable. The ritual concludes with a communal meal, where everyone shares dishes flavored with the sacred onions. The sense of connection between people, gods, and the land feels palpable. It's a reminder that in ancient Egypt, nothing was truly ordinary. Everything, even an onion, held deeper meaning. As you leave the temple, the night air cool against your skin, you carry the lingering scent of onions and the quiet reverence of the ceremony with you. A gentle reminder of the layers, visible and invisible, that surround us all. The city awakens with the gentle light of dawn as you make your way toward the scribes' quarters, tucked away in a quieter part of the sprawling metropolis. Here, words and knowledge are treasured treasures, and you're eager to see how the humble onion fits into the vast tapestry of Egyptian record-keeping and literature. Inside, scrolls and papyri are carefully unrolled, revealing meticulous hieroglyphs, describing everything from royal decrees to daily life. Among these ancient texts, you find recipes, medicinal instructions, and even poetry that celebrate the onion, not just as food, but as a symbol and a companion through the ages. One papyrus details a curious recipe for onion bread, where grated onions are mixed with barley flour and baked into flat loaves. You imagine the warm, slightly sweet aroma wafting through ancient kitchens, a comforting staple for common folk and nobles alike. The scribes tell you that onions also feature in funerary texts. The god Anubis, protector of the dead, is sometimes depicted with onions at his side, thought to guide souls through the afterlife's many layers, much like peeling back an onion's rings. Interestingly, scholars still debate whether these literary references were meant literally or metaphorically. Was the onion truly considered a spiritual guide? Or was it a poetic device to express life's complexities? The ambiguity adds a layer of mystery to your understanding. As you leaf through the scrolls, you discover playful poems likening the onion to the city's residents, layered, sometimes sharp, but ultimately nourishing. One verse even jokes about onions causing tears, not of sorrow, but the bittersweet joy of life's flavors. Among the scribes, you learn of a rare onion-related superstition. Dropping an onion was considered bad luck, thought to invite chaos into the household. You smile, remembering how often people today drop things in the kitchen and mutter similar curses. The quiet of the scriptorium, broken only by the scratching of reed pens, feels like a sanctuary where history is preserved, layer by layer. Just like peeling an onion, understanding this ancient culture requires patience, care, and a willingness to embrace both the mundane and the mystical. As you step back into the sunlight, the scribe's words echo softly in your mind, a reminder that even the simplest things, like an onion, can carry stories that outlast empires. The late morning sun filters through narrow windows as you wander toward a bustling marketplace, alive with the hum of traders, the calls of vendors, and the colourful display of goods from across the Nile Valley. Here, onions are not just sustenance, but a commodity woven deeply into trade, economy, and daily barter. You notice the vendors' voices rise and fall, like a gentle melody as they tout their produce, their baskets brimming with onions of all sizes and hues. The air is thick with a mingling of scents, fresh herbs, ripe dates, and that unmistakable tang of onions. It's a sensory feast, soothing rather than overwhelming, a reminder of the simple pleasures woven into daily life. You pause to chat with a merchant named Kepri, who shares the economics behind the onion trade. Onions are worth their weight in gold during certain seasons, he says, with a knowing smile. They travel far, from the delta to desert oases, traded for spices, cloth, even pottery. You learn that onions were one of the earliest crops to be transported long distances, making them a staple of both local and international markets. Their hardy nature meant they survived journeys better than more delicate produce. Interestingly, some merchants would inscribe onion motifs on their crates, a kind of branding that signified quality and freshness. Scholars still debate whether this was purely practical or a nod to the onion's spiritual significance. As you wander the stalls, you spot a curious sight, a small stand selling onion-based perfumes and ointments. The idea of using onions in fragrances might seem odd today, but in ancient Egypt, the sharp scent was believed to cleanse the air and protect the wearer. Kipri leans in conspiratorially to share a local tale. Once, an onion vendor was said to have outwitted a rival by spreading a rumor that his onions were blessed by the gods. Whether true or clever marketing, it worked, and his stall became the busiest on the street. You smile at the thought of ancient, entrepreneurial spirit, competition, cleverness, and a bit of theatrical flair, all revolving around this simple bulb. As the market buzz continues around you, you feel wrapped in the gentle rhythms of trade, community, and the enduring importance of onions in everyday Egyptian life. The afternoon sun begins to wane as you head toward a quieter part of the city, where artisans and healers ply their trades with careful hands. Here, in workshops scented with herbs and resins, you discover another dimension of the onion's role, its place in ancient Egyptian healing and beauty rituals. You enter a small apothecary filled with clay jars, dried plants, and the faint sharp scent of onions, mingling with lavender and frankincense. An elderly healer named Meret invites you to observe her preparations. She explains that onions were prized not only for their culinary uses, but also for their supposed ability to soothe ailments and beautify skin. A paste made from onion juice. And honey was a common remedy for minor wounds and infections, believed to speed healing and prevent scarring. Merit offers you a small sample of a salve. Its aroma surprisingly gentle, despite the onion's presence. You apply a bit to your wrist and feel a subtle warmth, soothing and comforting. She chuckles softly, mentioning a curious belief. Some thought that rubbing onions on the temples could ease headaches, though historians still argue whether this was truly effective or more of a placebo. As Mary works, she shares a quirky tidbit about beauty rituals. Women sometimes wore onion necklaces, believing the scent would protect them from evil spirits and ensure their skin remained radiant. The idea of perfume with a hint of onion might sound off-putting today, but here it's a symbol of strength and protection. You watch as Marie mixes oils and extracts, her movements rhythmic and deliberate, a quiet dance passed down through generations. The onions in her care seem less like a pungent vegetable and more like a treasured ingredient in a delicate craft. Outside, the city hums softly with life, but inside this small room, time slows. The healing power of the onion feels almost magical, a gentle reminder of how ancient people found comfort and care in nature's simplest gifts. As you leave, the smell of onions lingers faintly on your skin, a fragrant memory of the day's discoveries. Layers upon layers, just like the bulb itself. The late afternoon light spills over the Nile's calm waters as you drift toward the riverbank, where fishermen, farmers, and families gather to wind down their day. Here, the onion's story takes a turn toward daily life and social customs, woven into moments of rest and community. You settle on a shaded bench near a group of villagers sharing a meal after a day's work. The centerpiece, a simple onion salad, crisp and refreshing, made with sliced onions, fresh herbs, and a drizzle of tangy vinegar, a taste both familiar and timeless. The elders recount how onions were often part of communal meals, symbolizing sharing and hospitality. Passing the onion salad around the circle was a ritual of connection, binding people together over stories and laughter. You overhear a gentle joke about how onions have long been the original social lubricant, causing tears and laughter in equal measure. The villagers' humour is easy and warm, the kind that invites you to breathe deeply and feel at home. Interestingly, some historians still debate the extent to which onions were involved in celebrations versus everyday meals. Were they an occasional treat or a staple? The answer likely depends on the season and one's place in society. As dusk falls, you watch children playing nearby, their hands stained with onion juice from helping in the fields. You smile, thinking how such a simple vegetable could shape so many moments: work, play, healing, and rest. Nearby, a storyteller begins weaving tales of onions in myth and legend, from God's gifts to clever tricks, softening the day's end with gentle humor and wonder. You listen, feeling the calm settle deeper inside, the world quieting around you. With the river's gentle lapping as a backdrop, you imagine the onion's layers folding gently into the night, a comforting presence in both the ancient world and this peaceful moment. Night deepens, and you find yourself invited to a quiet household where the onion's role takes on a more intimate, almost secretive aspect. The world of ancient Egyptian cooking rituals. Within family kitchens, the room is softly lit by oil, lamps, shadows dancing on the mud brick walls. As the head cook prepares a meal with deliberate care, you watch as onions are peeled slowly, each layer carefully saved and used. Nothing wasted in this world where resources were precious. The cook hums a gentle tune, blending tradition with practicality, a rhythm as old as the city itself. The onion's aroma fills the air, mingling with garlic, cumin, and coriander, creating a scent that is both grounding and inviting. You realize how much of everyday life, even in something as simple as cooking, was steeped in ritual and respect. You learn that some families believed the onion's layers held protective powers, and cooking with them was a way to shield the household from harm. Peeling onions was almost a meditative act, a moment of connection between the mundane and the sacred. Interestingly, some historians still argue whether these cooking rituals were widespread or confined to specific regions and social classes. Either way, the onion's importance is undeniable, threaded through generations of recipes and stories. The cook shares a playful anecdote. Sometimes, onions were tossed into pots, not just for flavor, but as a subtle joke among family members, because their scent lingered long after the meal was finished. You smile, imagining how even in ancient times, people enjoyed a bit of humor, using onions to spark laughter and memories in equal measure. As the meal nears completion, you feel a warmth spreading, not just from the food, but from the sense of tradition, family, and the simple joy of sharing. The night deepens as you wander toward the temple precinct, where the onion's spiritual significance is illuminated by flickering torchlight and solemn chants. Here, priests and priestesses move in measured steps, carrying offerings of onions, wrapped in linen, destined for the gods. You observe the slow, deliberate rituals, the layering of incense smoke and whispered prayers, creating an atmosphere both mysterious and soothing. The onion, with its many layers, is seen as a perfect symbol of life's complexity, each peel revealing new depths. You learn that onions were often placed in tombs as part of burial rites, meant to nourish the soul on its journey to the afterlife. Priests recite hymns praising the onion's enduring qualities, strength, resilience, and the power to protect. Interestingly, historians still debate whether onions were chosen purely for their symbolism, or if practical considerations, like their long shelf life, played a part. This duality adds richness to the story you're unraveling. A gentle joke among the temple attendants notes that the onion might be the only vegetable deity truly deserving of tearful devotion, given the tears it causes both in life and in ritual. As you watch the sacred ceremony unfold, you feel the onion's quiet presence, wrapping around you like a comforting shawl, ancient, profound, and surprisingly tender. The temple's chants fade into the night, and you carry with you a sense of connection to the countless generations who found meaning in this humble bulb. The night is deep and still as you find yourself back in the heart of the city, where the soft glow of oil lamps flickers through open windows, and the scent of onions mingles with the cool desert air. You reflect on the journey you've taken through bustling markets, quiet kitchens, sacred temples, and the very scrolls that preserved history's layers. The onion, once just a simple bulb, now feels like an old friend, complex, humble, and rich with stories whispered through time. From its place on royal tables to the hands of everyday people, it has woven itself into the fabric of ancient Egyptian life in ways both practical and poetic. You remember the stories of cooks who worshipped onions, the healers who prized their soothing power, and the merchants who traded them like treasure. You recall the poetic verses, the playful jokes, and the sacred rituals that celebrated this unassuming vegetable. Historians may still debate the true extent of the onion's influence, but what remains clear is its lasting presence, a symbol of resilience, connection, and the gentle rhythms of daily life. As the city sleeps and the night deepens, you feel the onion's layers folding softly around you, a comforting reminder that even the simplest things carry profound meaning. Now, as you prepare to drift off yourself, carry with you this quiet appreciation for the small wonders that shape our world. Just as they shaped ancient Egypt, the day's discoveries fade gently into the quiet hum of night. Let the memories of bustling markets, sacred rituals, and warm kitchens dissolve slowly like a soft breeze across the Nile. Imagine the comforting scent of onions, mingling with the cool desert air, wrapping you in their ancient embrace. There's peace in the layers, each one unfolding gently, inviting you deeper into calm and rest. Now, let your breath slow and your mind quiet as the onion's story lulls you softly into dreams, where history whispers and time gently unwinds. Sweet dreams.